Welcome back to the Leather Shop. I'm your host, Matt Roach, and this month we have KC from Mack Provisions. Casey, thanks for hopping on, man. I appreciate it. I feel like we've really gone into sports. A lot of people I didn't even know existed in sports that do leather work, which is awesome for me because it takes a lot of my hobbies and merges them all into one. So thanks
Yeah,
for
yeah.
hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, you're right. For some reason, it seems like leather working and sports go hand in hand for me, and probably the same for you. So I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize the extent that there was leather workers associated with swords, which I should have been a little bit more apparent to me, but I didn't think of it.
Right.
Uh, but let's start off. I always like to start off by tell us a little bit about you and how Mac Provisions came to be.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Spokane, Washington, and that's where it kind of started for me. At like age 13 and 14, I started relacing friends and teammates' gloves. So that's kind of where it all started. Leather working started with relacing gloves. I remember walking to my local cobbler who was like a few blocks away and asking for any sort of lace to fix my glove. And, it took a while, but, maybe 10 years later, it's become my full-time business, or that's when it started about 10 years ago. Um, so yeah, it all revolves around working, on a baseball glove for me.
That's awesome. So you started doing just baseball repairs, but I know you mentioned so you were a baseball player prior, and that's kind of what drove you. Now, did you play for a long time, and did you notice you learned a lot of things by playing that you kind of adapted into, your business of how you make leather goods? Like, do you approach it differently than you think you would have if
Hmm.
you weren't a competitive baseball
I
player?
yeah, that's a good question, and I've thought about this quite a bit actually, and I've never had anybody ask me, but I think there's a certain level of work ethic that goes into any sports that's translatable to life after sports. So to answer your question, yeah, I played baseball at a pretty competitive level. I mean, I played on a travel ball team. In my year before going into college, I had 7 teammates drafted. So I played at a very high rate, and then I played a couple years of college baseball and just got burnt out. And then that's when I moved to Alaska. And it's when I moved to Alaska, I got a job at a tent shop, and then that's kind of what's started my foundation into the repair and custom sewing world. So yeah.
A tent shop. So are you talking just basic backyard tents, or is it, festival tents, the massive ones that'll, fill up a whole parking lot? Like what do you mean
Yeah.
tents?
Yeah, when I guess canvas wall tents is a technical term. The company I work for, they were bought out, but it used to be called Alaska Tent and Tarp. They're kind of pretty well known in the Anchorage, Fairbanks area. There's 2 locations, and we custom made tents, and they still do. And they offer a tent called the Arctic Oven. It's kind of like your traditional camping tent, but it's a lot beefier. Like you can have a stove in there and a stove jack. So. But where that was one part of the business, but the other part of the business, people would bring in ideas on a napkin and say, hey, can you make this, and show me their little coffee stained napkin with all their ideas to make whatever they're needing, some sort of cover, um, stuff like that. So that's, yeah, that it was a huge full service shop, anything from new tents to repairing. I think we even repaired jeans once. So it's kind of a big array of things.
So that's really interesting. You're the first person I've ever talked to that worked in a commercial, not only tent business, but something that was really commercial in a sense that it was canvas as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. It's like the place I worked at was not leather at all, like zero. Of course, there's like sometimes there's reinforcements where there is leather incorporated, but for the most part, it's canvas and a lot of synthetic materials. So, but it's good. I think anybody who wants to do full time leather work, going and working in a facility where you're, it was quasi mass production. Like there was multiple sewers and sewing stations. So um, learning how things work and the workflow and divvying up parts of work, because you don't usually make things start to finish. You do it as a team, and you do one bit, and your coworkers do others. So it's an interesting concept when comparing it to individual sole proprietorship. You know what I mean? It's very,
Yeah.
very different.
That's really interesting. Now, did you find that there was a comparison between the two in the sense that a lot of the skills were transferable?
Yeah, when I mean just the breaking it down to operating a sewing machine. Yes, yeah, it's all the same. It's just it's different. And like I know we probably will get into this, but mass production baseball glove companies, you'll have hundreds of workers in like China or somewhere in Asia, and they'll be doing just like one thing. They'll be sewing one part, and that they have a stack of them, and that's typically how it works on a massive production like that. You get your pile of one thing that you just sew and sew and sew in multiple. So it's interesting.
I've seen that multiple times, and
Yeah,
that's always fascinated me in the sense that I assume it is the fastest way to do it.
yeah, yeah,
But
for
at the
sure.
same time, I wonder if that pigeonholes people in terms of understanding how to make, like, do you think that these people get so, if you do the same thing every single day, that same piece, I wonder if it is, after a certain while, it becomes too difficult to go to other parts of, whether making a
Mm.
glove or making another product. I think, do you think the skills are very transferable on a large scale, or do you think
Yeah,
it's,
that's a good question. I don't. I I guess I see what you mean by pigeonholing. You could get into that rut and routine where you're only sewing one thing and you don't make anything else, so your skills don't transfer over. But if just from my like little experience in this world, you do that, then you move on to a new project, or you work on a project where it's just by yourself, or where you do make things start to finish. So in my experience, it's sometimes that you get kind of handcuffed into doing one thing, and then you move on to the next project and you make something completely by yourself. So I think there's I think a balance there, but for sure, like I've seen videos of gloves being made in China where they're just like you said, you're doing one thing and you're pigeonholed into that, and there's not, it doesn't seem like there's upward mobility or anything as far as making bigger or a full glove yourself. You know what I mean?
yeah, I know people who have worked with canvas. I know
Mm-hmm.
Dan, one of our past guests, he works with canvas and makes, clothing for that. But what did you learn that most people might not know about working with canvas? Now, I haven't made much with canvas, and I would like to incorporate canvas into more things that I do, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be, a duffel bag or just anything. I find the aspect of incorporating it very interesting, but I haven't taken the plunge because it does seem rather intimidating,
Yeah,
because it feels similar but so different at the same time.
yeah,
Was there
totally.
any things that surprised you, or what do you share? What do you see about in Canvas that most people might not?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception, like I used to do for a short while, I did boat canvas. When you think of boat canvas, you don't necessarily think of actual cotton, natural fiber canvas. It's not the same. I think that's the biggest misconception I think people may get confused by. So like when you do canvas work, sometimes it doesn't mean you're working with, cotton canvas. You're working with some sort of man-made material that acts and does the same thing as what canvas used to be traditionally. So I think that would be my answer for that. But yeah, it is I mean, it's a woven fiber. It's so different. And there's different grades, there's different thicknesses, there's sometimes ratios of canvas to a poly fiber, so it's not technically canvas. It's a whole big conversation just to go into that world. But it's fun. It's so different than leather. It's not. depending on how thick it is, or if it's waxed, it's not as pliable with leather. Like you can wet leather and make it more pliable and stuff. So it's just a whole nother realm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, for anybody, listeners out there, if you want to learn more about canvas and you want us to maybe go a little bit deeper because it's something you're thinking of incorporating, let us know and maybe we can do a smaller side episode and Casey can, give us a little bit more insight. Because I honestly, before this conversation, I didn't realize he had insight into canvas, and I find it interesting. But
Yeah,
if you guys all find it interesting, let us know on social media and on the website, and send us a note because I want to provide interesting content. So
yeah,
that's really awesome that have that background. So
yeah.
bringing it back, you mainly make gloves, and we
Mhm.
had Scott on in the past, and we went into some of the aspects of how he makes his gloves. And I think that it's hard to even cover everything that goes into a glove in just the one
Mhm.
episode, because I think there's so
Right,
many factors that go into it.
right. Yeah.
What one idea that you mentioned that we didn't really delve into was the kinds of leathers that are used in making gloves and why certain ones are better than others. And you can also answer it as a player too, of what is the best for you as a player.
Right.
uh kind of give us a little bit of background into how you make them, why you choose the leathers you choose, and
Mhm.
why that's what's used in the industry, why that's the industry norm.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a, I guess I go kind of against the grain because I tend to kind of have an old school, more rugged looking glove. I guess there's a lot of people out there that are trying to break the norm. A lot of glove companies now use that. I mean, all baseball gloves are chrome tanned, but I think a lot of the big manufacturers have a really soft, pliable leather that they like to use because it's more comfortable. It's easier to break in, and it's not true for every glove company, but a softer chrome tan leather is liked. Whereas I get, for the most part, most of my leather comes from Horween. It's called Ball Glove X. It's very rigid. It's very stiff. It's very hard to work with, and it takes a lot of work to get it broken in. But that's because it's kind of old school. I like that. I think the gloves made in the 80s and 90s, like Rawlings, Heart of the Hide gloves, are like the cream of the crop, and that's kind of what I shoot for as far as aesthetic and look and feel as far as a baseball glove. So it's kind of foreign because a lot of kids these days, they want a glove that's pink or Carolina blue or something like that. And I have like a very boring tan glove, but I think some people agree with me that it's a feel and a look that is not on the market today. So
Now, one thing you mentioned was breaking them in, and I assume the softer the leather, the easier it is to break in. Now, a glove like one you make, you said it was stiff, so I guess two parts is, since it is so stiff, when you're making it, do you find that leather makes it much more difficult, especially for like fingers and things like that, to reverse it inside out? Do those
yeah,
things to do the basic construction of it. Do you find that is a uh, much more of a challenge than normal? And how do you go about breaking them in?
yeah. So that's I think I'll answer that in two parts. I think when it comes to constructing a baseball glove, right? If you think about a glove, it's got two sides to it. There's the back shell and the front shell, and those are sewn together inside out. And when you're taking two flat pieces of material and then you're trying to make something that catches a round ball, you're going to have these two sides of the shells with equal dimensions, but you have these. There's many tick marks that you have to line up as you sew that glove. Now, when you're working with a very stiff leather that has like zero stretch, there's a lot of working that leather to get it to match up and sew perfectly because there's all the fingertips, all the points have to match perfectly in the center. There's a lot of uh, pulling and stretching and making sure everything sews together. But when you do get it flipped inside out and made into a glove, there's a lot of methods. There's a lot of people out there, and Scott even touched on this, that he didn't think you should fully dunk your glove in a bucket of water, and that's debatable. And I tend to agree with him. I think the best way to break in a glove is to just play catch with it and use a mallet and just break your glove in the old way. Like Scott said, water can cause some like molding, especially for me. I use 100% wool padding, which is not normal. Most people use a polyester. Polyester doesn't tend to break down or get moldy because it's a natural fiber, or a man-made fiber, whereas 100% wool will definitely get wet and then mold. So I agree with him. But yeah, long story short, just break it in by playing catch and using a mallet, maybe a little bit of water in the pocket.
Now, how long would you say is a traditional break-in period? Say you're just playing catch, normal wear and tear. Say you're a kid in Little League and you're just doing a regular season. Is it something that you can break in a season or a
Oh yeah,
week?
for sure. For
Like
sure.
how
Maybe
long does
I
it
think
take?
everybody's different, right? Like it depends on you, if it's you as an adult or it's you as your kid. There's going to be a difference there depending on how strong that person is. But there's like, I work with my buddy Chris, and he has a full break-in service. You send him your glove, and he'll break it into your specification, like where you want your thumb to land on which finger. Sometimes kids want their thumb to close down on the index finger or the ring finger, depending on the position. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but he uses a big pneumatic machine that pretty much punches the leather, which mimics basically a plain catch. But I would say, for me personally, I like, every time I do a glove drop, I make the first one for me as a tester, and that takes me about a week to get it to the point where I'd be comfortable in playing with it.
So now how many gloves do you have personally now that you've done a sample of each run that you do? Do you keep them all? Like how does
Oh
that?
yeah, for sure. Yep. So I have two glove types. So um, before like offering gloves full time, I've made a lot. I need to stress this a lot. I made a lot of bad ones. So you make a bunch of gloves, and I don't want to say it's a waste. It's definitely not a waste because you learn from each build, but it's definitely a waste of leather because you got to learn how to put it together. It's the hardest thing I've ever sewn is a baseball glove. And I've worked in the yacht industry making furniture and did boat canvas, and like we said, making tents. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. So yeah.
Well, we talked offline and we actually thought about, maybe even doing a two-part episode where while you and Scott probably both agree it's really hard to make a glove, but we thought it would be kind of interesting to see how it goes. Just try it. I may fail miserably,
Right.
but it'd be a good conversation piece to let people know where the challenges are for people who've never made one before. If you want to get into it, what you can expect, because sometimes it's hard to think back to all the struggles you've gone through when you get to the point where usually when I'm interviewing somebody, they're really great at their craft.
Right.
So it would be interesting to see it from my perspective of where I went wrong, where were the pain points for me? Did I find it was feasible for the average person to just actually make a serviceable glove their first time?
Yeah.
And it's also kind of a compliment to how hard it is to do and the amount of work you guys have put into master that
Yeah.
craft that you continue to evolve with. So we're probably going to do a two-parter where we'll do this and then we'll go back and we'll work together, and then we'll do like a follow-up episode to like let people know how it went.
Yeah.
Which I honestly think is fun just because I enjoy making.
Yeah.
So there's something really just exciting about making things.
Yeah.
So
It'll be fun to talk about because there's not too many people that I can talk to about making gloves, so it'd be fun to talk to them. Like a baseball glove, like I said, it's broken into two sides, the front and back shell, and then there's the handstall that goes inside that. But the two pieces of the two sides of the glove are sewn together with a 1/4 inch piece of welting. And I don't know I don't know what your experience is like, but working with a 1/4 inch piece of welting is very difficult to make sure you hit it in the center and make sure you're sewing straight. It's going to be fun to have a conversation with you after you've
Yeah.
pulled all your hair out.
Yeah, no, and I love that part. To me, I think it's just fun, and I'm sure most of the people that you talk to and work with, they're probably not glove makers per se. They probably work with gloves, but they're probably not leather workers per se, in the sense that they make a lot of things. They may do certain aspects, but I don't know. Do a lot of the people that you talk with, do they actually make from scratch like you do, or do they kind of do things that are kind of parallel to that
Yeah, no,
craft?
I mean, I think the people that who make gloves these days, we don't even speak the same language, so I don't. It's not it's when you find a fellow like glove maker or somebody who knows what it takes to make a glove, it's real nice to kind of bounce ideas off each other because there's few and far between. But for the most part, like the cream of the crop are the people in Japan. They make the best gloves, and obviously I don't speak Japanese, so that would be there would be a
Maybe
definite.
that's a Duolingo thing. Maybe you need to
Yeah,
learn some Japanese and go out there and work, with
yeah,
Mizuno. Mizuno's Japanese, right?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
they have their one factory that makes a lot of the stuff, like for like Ichiro's glove and stuff like that. But for the most part, they have factories all over Asia. Every major glove company has. Mostly, they have gloves in the Philippines or China or somewhere like that.
So you did say the welting, and I kind of want to go back to that in the sense of what is the welting made out of, and is it like a cord, like a leather cord, or is it like in my mind it was always a thin piece of leather cord that was wrapped in leather that then you sewed to each piece. I always thought that's how it was done, but it sounds like you guys go about it differently. What is it, and kind of how do you go
Yeah,
about
yeah. Well, I
using
guess
it?
when you think of welting, what you just described is what I was used to in the upholstery industry when I worked
Yeah.
at the yacht company, and we needed to make a cushion with with welting in it. That's basically what it is. It's a piece of foam with um, fabric wrapped around that you sew between your components of a seat cushion or something like that. But on a baseball glove, there's two different ways. There's split welting and then there's rolled welting. Rolled welting is it's really thin top grain leather that's folded. A lot of people sew it. Some people glue it. Um, and that is what holds that together. And usually it's fun to, what's popular today is there's a lot of gloves with contrasting colors as the welting. Say you've got like a brown glove, they'll have something like a pink or a blue that is that welting color. But for me, like what I like to do is I use a split welting. It's basically, I guess you could call it suede. It's basically suede.
Yeah.
So it's just a piece of leather that's about a 1/4 inch. Sometimes it's smaller. Sometimes it's anywhere between an eighth and a 1/4 inch that sits in between the two layers of material.
And it's funny. I think mine has suede on it too, and I'm sure it's partially cost effective. So a lot of people have probably used suede in the past because suede is extremely cheap. But I
Yeah,
also have grown to kind of like having suede there. I don't know why,
hmm.
but the contrast between that and the leather always, maybe it's because it's what I'm used to,
Yeah.
and
That's what you.
I don't know any different, so it's comforting to me.
Hmm.
And I'm sure it was originally a cost saving measure, but I feel as though I kind of like it. I've
Yeah,
grown to, if I was going to make another glove, I almost feel like I'd want suede in there because it's what I'm comfortable with. I like, it's the tactile thing too. Like sometimes it's
yeah.
like when you touch it, like you just kind of, it has that like softness too.
Yeah, yeah. I like
Um,
it too. We're about the same age, like we were talking about
yeah.
offline, but a lot of gloves up until like I don't know, I want to say maybe 10 years ago, they started doing rolled welting. It could be soon earlier than that, but for the most part, it became very popular about 10, 15 years ago to have a full grain rolled welting. And I don't think it's as durable because it's like really thin. It's almost like a 1 ounce piece of leather that's folded. So basically, you've got 2 to 3 ounces
Yeah.
in there, and I use about a 5 ounce piece of suede, which I think is a little bit more durable, and it is
Yep.
aesthetically the same as something that would have been made in the 80s and 90s. So I personally like it, but it's not for everyone.
Well, the other thing too is if you have the rolled leather, I always assumed that it's going to fall. You're going to catch it on the ground. You're going to catch things on concrete, and that's just going to rip open.
Yeah, that top grain's it's really thin, right?
And then
So
it doesn't look right. Like, because
yeah,
suede, you can't really make it look any worse. It's already kind of a fuzzy little mess, so you don't even really notice
yeah,
it.
yeah, for sure.
As a
Yeah,
as opposed to a smooth top grain that the more you play with it and that cracks open,
yeah,
it's not
yep.
gonna look as aesthetically pleasing and
I
might
agree.
not age as gracefully.
You're hitting it right on the nose. Why I don't prefer it. It is cool out of the box. It's really cool because it's usually contrasting and it's neat. And a lot of people prefer it, but I like the old stuff. It's just
Yeah.
it's cooler looking in my opinion. But that's not a popular opinion. All the kids these days they want something flashy, especially with that welting.
Well, the other thing is once you pick a welting, you're probably stuck with it. There's no like otherwise you just have to scrap the glove. So if you pick like a random color that you don't like, or you go to play for a school that doesn't have those colors and your
Mm-hmm.
gloves, bright orange welting,
Right.
you're stuck with that unless you want to get a brand new glove. You can't just take that out like you can lacing.
Yeah, right.
That's a one-time thing.
Whereas what the traditional welting for most baseball gloves have always been, they've always been it's chromium gray. It's just the core to chrome leather gray.
Hmm.
So that's pretty neutral. You can it can go with any team color or whatever.
Is there a certain now? I think the one thing that I think is not controversial, but people have strong feelings on
Mm-hmm.
is the webbing.
Yeah, yeah,
Certain people like a certain web. And if you ask somebody, they won't buy a certain glove that doesn't have a certain web. Like,
right.
just to them, it's what they like, and it's a personal preference and how they can take it out of the pocket and how it sits and everything. Do you have a preference from making and playing? In
Mm.
terms of what do you prefer as a player and what do you find is the nicest that you like making?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have thought about this a lot, but I've never talked to anybody about it. I never had that question. It's a great question because some webs do take a lot more time to make or lace up versus some other ones. Traditional pitcher's gloves, it's usually a solid one piece web. That's really easy to lace up. It's really easy to sew. Sometimes I get customers that want custom webs with like their initials or a certain design or whatever in it. And those are fun because I get to use my rolling foot machine and custom make the web. But I think I offer a glove with an H web, and there's a lot of different parts. And there's like, let's see if you think about it. There's the top spiral part that's so you sew in the H part, and then there's like one, two, three, four, five, 6 pieces there, 5 pieces, whatever. There's a lot more time consuming than any other glove or webs. Sorry. So yeah, definitely the H web is the most time consuming, which is usually the hardest.
Is that the one that you currently have on your website, the infield glove?
Nope, no, the one so I don't because the infield glove that's a what you're seeing on the website. That's a solid web. Those are easy peasy. It's just fold over a couple times and
Oh, I
sew.
know what the H is, where there's the little gaps. I know what it is.
Yep,
For a
yep,
second,
yep,
I couldn't piece it together.
yeah.
And no, I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about. Yep.
yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's the top spiral, the two uh pillars, and then the horizontal H part, and then the bottom part. So there's one,
Yep.
two, three, four, 5 pieces that you like integrate and sew together and then lace in. I think it's way more time consuming, but it's so popular, especially like at a 12 or 13 size glove. Those H webs are real popular for outfielders. But they're time consuming.
So what's the one with the little thin strips that go in, out, in, out, in, out, and then, vice versa? They kind of like they're the little squares. Does
Not.
So like when they have the pieces of leather that they go across and then down, and they go like in and out,
Oh,
in and out, in and out, and
they're
then
yeah,
the same thing up and down.
yeah. They call that a basket web, or
Uh,
that's what Rawlings call it. It's a woven. It's a woven. I have a glove over there. I can't grab it, but it's like a basket weave.
yeah,
Yeah, those were super popular in the 80s and 90s. They're not so much popular now, but I think they're
that's
cool.
that's what mine is, and that's my favorite.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
I
makes sense. Yeah.
I love that, and also I found that the easiest to get the ball out of. I thought it when you caught it, it it sat. It reminds me of a lacrosse stick.
Yeah, kind of.
When you have it broken in perfectly, it sits in there like it's just nestled in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Derek Jeter, who was a shortstop for the Yankees, he used a basket web, which was not popular for a shortstop, but I think he had that similar feeling. There's some play there for making, there's some play in the web because it's woven. It's not a solid piece, so because it's woven like that, there's some give. Yeah, I agree. I think it's cool because it kind of can nestle that ball a little bit easier than some other webs.
I always felt I had ultimate control. Like if it was
Yeah.
in there and I just want to flip it out real quick, I almost felt like I had a lot of control. And I'm sure that's personal preference and probably the way
Right.
my glove broke in. Now, are those types of webbings more difficult, or do you still use a veg tan on that, or do you use something that is softer? Like, how do you go about making something? Like, do you change the material based on the type of webbing that you're using?
No, never. All gloves are made out of chrome tan. When it comes to leather, there's two types of tanning. There's other ways, but basically, there's either chrome tanning or veg tanning, and gloves are not made at all. I mean, there may be a few that have some veg tan, but for the most part, they're all chrome tan, and that has everything to do with the tannage. Chromium is used in chrome tanning, which makes those fibers pretty resilient. They don't shrink or grow or stretch out too much. They pretty much come back to form after wetting. Whereas veg tan, when you wet veg tan and you just let it dry, those fibers, because it's naturally tanned, the fibers in the leather will shrink. So if you find, like, I've repaired a glove that had internal components that were made with veg tan, and the parts, because of your hand and how much sweat there is, completely shrunk, like turned into like little pieces, and ended up ripping because of it, because you're sticking your
Wow.
hand in this really tight internal part, and it just causes everything to rip. So yeah, every glove is made from a chrome tan leather.
That's interesting. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that there was all facets of it. Now,
Oh.
in terms of other aspects, I noticed that the one you have on there now, it has almost like and it's exactly the same as the glove that I have, and I don't know if it's just not as popular because Scott mentioned this too, is that there's a lot of things that are moving synthetic, and it's because of probably weight,
Mm.
cost.
Yeah.
But right above on the top of your hand, you have like almost fur. Now, what is that, and is there a reason why that's not as common as it used to be? Because that's on my glove, from the 80s and 90s,
Mhm.
but I don't see that as much. Or maybe I'm just not looking in all the right places, and it's is common in certain areas. I mean, when I see gloves, I only usually see them at like Dick's Sporting Goods and
Right.
stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't usually see it on the ones they have on the walls, and I was wondering why that kind of went away because I thought that aged perfect over time and kind of molds to your hand.
Yeah. I like it. On, like you said, on my all my gloves, they have what is called shearling. It's actual um, real shearling, whereas a lot of gloves have a synthetic replication of that. They look like it's a real shearling, but it's not. It's just a polyester fiber. Or a lot of gloves these days, they have a foam padding with a mesh for
Yeah.
breathability. Um, the only thing that probably why companies don't use it as much, there's probably two reasons. It's probably cost effective to use a polyester or a foam or something there, and those fibers, because they're man-made, don't break down. The wrist on a glove is very popular, or it's very common to see it broken. It breaks down quicker because there's all that sweat coming from your hand, and it causes that leather to deteriorate. So those are probably the two big reasons. But for me, for a personal preference, I use just like a regular shearling, which you'd find in like a pair of um, indoor loafers or whatever. It's actual real leather, real fibers.
Now, do you find that that's harder to source, or do you get that from your leather supplier as well?
No, it's not harder to source, but it's definitely way more expensive. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like buying a full hide. It's a couple $100 for a really good shearling.
Yeah.
So
Luckily, you probably only use, what, 2 by 4 piece, inches. It's not,
yeah, yeah.
you're not using a lot per. So that hide will last you,
Hmm.
years.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
you
maybe.
mentioned
Yeah,
something, I guess, yeah, depending on your volume, if you're cranking out a ton, but
yeah,
I assume you can probably get a lot out of there because it's almost like it's a coaster size,
yeah,
you
right. Well,
know?
I mean, it's a sheep, so there's the hides themselves are much smaller. I think they're about
Oh, you're right. Yep.
10
Yeah.
square feet. I'm like, it's funny you ask because I'm on the verge, like, oh boy, I'm cutting from the armpit areas, um, and kind of the neck region. I'm kind of wearing down, and I have to probably reorder some new, um, which I don't want to do. I don't want to spend another couple $100 on some leather. So,
Well, somebody
yeah,
here buy a couple gloves so we can
there you
get
go.
KC some buy yourself or your kid a glove so he
There
can
you
go buy
go.
some shearling.
Please.
But you mentioned one thing like 10 minutes ago about a rolling foot machine.
Oh, a
I don't
rolling
know if
foot machine?
Oh, rolling. I thought you said rolling, and I was thinking of rolling like the company. I was
The
like, did they make
company.
specific machine? I was like, I wondered if they made specific machinery for making gloves. That's why I was like, oh,
Hmm.
that's
No, no,
interesting if they had like a specific machine.
that would be cool, but no, they don't. Not that I know about, obviously, but they might have machines that they make themselves to make the process easier. But or like Scott, Scott inherited a lot of the Rawlings machines because that were pretty specialty that they had custom made. But no, when it comes to custom web sewing or um, really intricate sewing that you really need to plant your needle in certain positions of the web, a rolling foot. I have a post bed rolling foot machine that does that like perfectly. I can see on my stitch pass. It's industrial. It can sew very thick leather, and really tight turns. It's pretty common in like the boot industry because you're you know working with that kind of stitch pass.
Now, is would you say that that is probably what machines could you not, live without?
Yeah, my bread and butter every day is a Konzo 207, which is a cylinder arm. I couldn't make anything without a cylinder arm. I personally like there's lots of debates in the glove community on if you could make a glove on a flatbed. I know like companies like Nakona, they make all their gloves on a flatbed machine. But me personally, I think it's you're making something round. Like a baseball glove is shaped. It's definitely you're trying to catch a ball. It's a round. It kind of takes a round shape. So sewing something on a cylinder bed where you can manipulate the glove like that is like I couldn't do it without my 207. So yeah, that's what I use
Yeah.
every day.
So if I have just the cylinder arm, I should be able to do
You can do it all.
most of the things. I can do it
You
all. Oh,
you
okay.
you can make a whole glove with the cylinder arm. It depends. There's lots of factors. I use 135 Tex 135 thread. I use sometimes depending on the where I'm sewing. I use a bigger needle, but that every person who has an industrial sewing machine, plays that game. But yeah, the most important part is using 135 or some other people call it DB 138,
Do
but that's more big
you
thread.
find there's a specific thread that works better for making baseball gloves? Because I feel as though there's certain applications for different types of thread that whether you're hand stitching or machine sewing, there's different threads for different applications. Do you think there's one that works best
Yeah,
for
the
gloves?
industry uses nylon. Yeah,
Nylon.
nylon. Um, Gloves back in the day used to be sewn with cotton. Um, and I'll tear apart an old glove and just pull on the leather, and all that cotton thread you can see the dry rot pull out. So just because nylon's so durable, and if you're comparing nylon to polyester, like for me, I use a polyester when I hand stitch, but when it comes to machine stitching, all my gloves are nylon just because of the stretch in nylon is so much more.
Yeah.
So yeah, nylon's it. I get all my nylon from an American company that makes tons of colors, and it's the way to go.
Yeah, honestly, thread is probably the most overwhelming aspect
Yeah.
when it comes to leather because there's so many suppliers, different kinds, and subtle variations that it almost feels as though there's a million companies and there's three at the same time.
It's true.
Like, I honestly feel like there's maybe less than 10 companies that actually make the world's thread, and there's just all these middlemen that are selling it
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it just they all name them different. There's so much that is there. The average person coming into this, I can't imagine how they even go about doing it because I find it overwhelming and I've been doing this for a long time. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know how somebody coming in just goes, and I understand why they buy from middlemen like, the weavers and those places. Like, it's it's easier. You just be like, all right, like there's thread here.
Yeah, yeah, you can. I think that's the biggest and hardest thing when you're starting. For me, at least, starting a baseball glove company is sourcing as cheap of materials, but at the same time as durable. Right? It's so hard to navigate this world, and little things like thread choice matter. Even the way it's produced matters. So yeah, it's a lot of work. It's just, I think if anybody wants to sew a glove, just get some American Efford Tex 135 nylon thread, and that's UV rated. It's the way to go. So
Yeah, especially that. I'm glad that you said that at the end, the UV rated, because gloves are going to sit in the sun.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Baseball is, and you know what? You're going to leave your glove on the grass in the sun. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
it's gonna it's gonna get the elements probably more so than a lot of items that you're making. You're not
Oh,
always
for
going to be
sure.
leaving your wallet, just on the grass, but like you're going
No.
to be out there for hours and hours playing, and it's going to sometimes in the beating sun, and it's going to sit in a hot bag, and then it's going
Yeah,
to
yeah,
go out there, and it's like there's a lot that the being it takes. So I think that is a very
yeah.
interesting aspect that you mentioned of the UV rated. Are most threads UV rated, or I've never heard of
Yeah,
that before, but that
yeah.
makes
I
sense.
think for the most part, they see, and this is the tough thing. You don't know if they really are or not.
Yeah, you
Some
take them
even
at their
come with,
word.
yeah, some come with an FR rating, so fire rated. Oh, it's tough to say, but yeah, for the most part, I think a lot of the man-made materials come with a UV treatment on it. So like definitely, since nylon's man-made thread, it's comes UV treated. Yeah, and it's important. You definitely want that, especially like you just said. It's you're going from a from the field being wet to in your bag, and then in the back of your car, and then back in the sun and on the field. Yeah, you want to make sure it's protected.
So I know you mentioned at the beginning that you do kind of, runs of gloves.
Hmm.
You'll make a certain number. Now, do you make a lot and keep them in stock, or do you kind of just be like, you know what, I'm going to make 15 gloves, or do you make them as the orders kind of come in? Like, do
Yeah,
you batch, or do you kind of just do, if something comes in, you'll make it, but this is the current style I'm making?
yeah, that's tough. No, I don't make them. I make them to order, and there's a massive lead time, just because I kind of do gloves on the side. Mostly my day to day revolves around repairing gloves. So
Hmm.
when it comes to making new gloves, I have to clean all my machines and get my workshop semi clean to work with new leather. It's a different situation working with a dirty old glove versus making a brand new one. So yeah, there's definitely I make them to order just because of that specifically. Yeah, I don't make them in batches because each web is different, so that's different hole punching. I don't want to make a glove that's takes up a lot of leather, eats away at a lot of leather without knowing for sure if I'm going to sell that web style. I have like 5 web styles per glove, so I just kind of wait for the order.
Is there one that you would say is more popular than others? Like, what is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
best style?
I think the for my 11 and a half, I offer a solid web. It's like the one I like and prefer. It's cool to me, and I think other people in this glove collecting community agree with me. I think there's a solid one piece web that's just kind of popular.
Nice. Yeah, I did see the other ones, and it's funny. I actually see kind of the glove that I have on here, and I'm not sure mine's a 12.25, but it's very
Might be
similar to the
close.
style.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably similar.
Hmm.
But it's funny to like see that style because it doesn't feel as popular anymore. When
No,
I
it's there.
go
Yeah.
to
So
Dick's.
yeah, I've purposely done. I offer 2 gloves. One's the 12 and a quarter, like you were saying, and that's
Hmm.
on an old school pattern. When it came to patterning that glove, it was based off an 80s glove. That was very
That's
popular
awesome.
then, and that's just like what I like. Not everybody's going to agree with me because it's not the same as gloves are now. But then 11 and a half is a very popular size, so I've made that for a more modern pattern, but with kind of the old school material. So it's kind of a blend with that 11 and a half. So an 11 and a half, you can be a pitcher and use that. You can be a middle infielder. I think some third baseman probably use a little bit bigger glove, but you can play that like as a kid. You could use 11 and a half at third. Heck, some of the younger kids could probably use 11 and a half in the outfield, but it's a really popular size. If I'm going to play catch, it's probably with a 11 and a half glove.
Yeah, no, I really love the lineup. There's a lot of character to it.
Yeah.
Now I noticed in the back of the picture you have some dies back there. Do you once
Mm.
you kind of have a design and a pattern, do you get dies made or do you try to find a way to incorporate the fewest amount of dies that can be universally used across gloves?
I don't currently have a die yet. Dies are tough. My ultimate goal would be to get a massive CNC machine, like a 6 foot table CNC machine. So like a lot of companies these days are cutting leather like that. You can roll out the whole hide. You can put your pattern above and go from there. So right now everything's for the most part, especially when I'm repairing gloves, everything's kind of hand cut or I digitize the pattern and CNC cut. But for the most part, everything's hand cut. And just because there's so many web styles, that whole perimeter around the thumb and pinky or thumb and index is going to have different hole patterns. So I can't just cut out. If I get a clicker, I guess I'll. Sorry, I'm just spitting out words. If I'm going to get a clicker, it would be without any hole punching around the index and thumb where I'm going to do the web because I'll hand cut that.
Oh,
So,
so are
but
those not clicker dies behind you?
those are for the wallets. Um,
Oh, I was gonna say, I
yeah.
was like, I feel like I see clicker dies, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
my eyes
Yeah,
are
yeah,
like, throwing me for a loop.
yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
before
that makes
before
sense.
glove making, my day to day was making wallets. I used to repurpose vintage baseball gloves and turn them into wallets, and that kind of that there's a lot of people doing that. So I started doing that in 2014, and since then there's like hundreds and hundreds of people who make baseball glove wallet. So I kind of stepped away from that, got a job at the yacht company, and then have come back doing glove repair because the market's just not oversaturated. There's not a lot of people repairing gloves like the in-depth way that I do. So it just makes a little bit more sense to do it that way.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely, and you're right too. It is time consuming, and CNC, I'm sure, is definitely a really practical way to go, and they're
Yeah.
getting cheaper as time goes on.
Oh, dude, I know. I've looked at so many. That's like my guilty pleasures to go on and watch companies that have them and watch them do it. But like, my other guilty pleasure is to watch some other glove makers. There's a company in Korea. J-Leak is the company, and they have videos of them making gloves, and they have the old school clickers, and they have multiple clicker dies for each glove style, each web style. It's awesome. It's fun to watch. They'll offer videos of them making it start to finish, from rolling out the leather to sewing it all together. So it's really cool.
That's awesome. Now, when you're making, just say, we'll just say like a basic glove, how many square feet would you say it probably is per glove? Like, how many can you get out of a 20-foot hide? Like, is it, do you
Mm.
get more, or is it one of those things where you don't get as much as you'd think?
It's tough. It depends on the hide. Obviously, there's
Yeah.
qualities between each hide. I
Yeah.
would say a glove is about 5 to 6 square feet. So you can get probably five ish.
Yeah.
So maybe four. I'd probably say four is a safe number, especially if it's like a 20 foot or 20 square foot versus something like a 25. Just because it's a little bigger doesn't mean that you can use every part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're right.
yeah. And
Is
that's
there,
there's certain parts of the hide. I think that's what you're about to ask. Is there certain parts
yeah.
of the hide that, yeah. But yes, sorry to cut you off, but yeah, there are certain sections of the glove that use certain parts of the hide, like the back. Um, if there's not any markings on it, is like the cream of the crop. That's where you're going to make the shell where you catch the ball. That's where your glove's going to be made from. Whereas the internal parts could be cut from the neck or the belly. So yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say, because the bend seems like it's the perfect thing to catch the ball on. It's going to age. It's the strongest.
Yep. Yep.
That made the most sense, and that makes sense because so you can only make so many out of that particular area.
Yeah. And it
Uh,
matters what way you cut into the leather, right? You want, because there's a natural stretch on that part of the bend that you want. Like if you're making a belt, you think about, you cut it from the full length of that bend, and there's going to have some natural stretch. So you want that grain structure to be the same for a glove, which is
yeah,
it's
well, that
cool.
makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. That's the thing that I always find the most fascinating about all aspects of leatherwork is there's so much nuance to making any product. There's
Yeah.
not just a one size fits all. And I think even after hundreds of years, people are still finding ways to evolve in the way that they make things. And
Right.
that to me is the most fascinating part. It's not like baseball gloves are new, but it
No.
also feels like even with the same materials, I know that there's a lot of innovation in terms of weight and synthetics and these things, but I still feel there's current evolution on basic leather gloves in the
Yeah.
way that they're being made and their way they're being thought about is the design's not changing, but the innovation is still there. People are still thinking critically about how to make it. And I find that really fascinating. Like even how you
Yeah.
just said,
Same.
like the way that it's angled and the way that like you're cutting, you want to make sure that it's done in a certain way. And that's really interesting. That's kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
fascinating.
There's a lot of things that matter when it comes to cutting into the hide, but you're right. It is cool to think about the innovation that even like I have to give a lot of credit to Japanese makers because they've kind of reinvented the wheel on gloves. They're now making gloves that are shaped so different than what's on the American market, and they even have the that's called the finger crotch in between the index and the middle finger. At the very bottom, there's that turn in the leather, and a lot of times that leather pulls out. So the Japanese have reinvented that whole design where that wraps in between the index and middle finger and goes back to the back part of the shell. And so there's not as much wear and tear in that area. It's a very cool design, and it's become super popular, especially with gloves made over there. So it's always changing, it's always adapting and becoming more useful and longer lasting. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I think it's said for a lot of things where there's been a lot of innovation from Japanese culture. I think you look at
Yeah.
blacksmithing, you look at leatherworking, you look at denim, you look at all these things, and
Yeah.
they're at the forefront of a lot of
Yeah.
things, which is really fascinating. I need to learn Japanese so I can interview some people. I feel like there's so many amazing craftsmen and craftwomen out there that I'd love to just have conversations with.
Oh, same. Oh man, yeah. My wife and I talk about going to Japan someday. It would be really cool to just go over there and kind of soak up that culture, because it is an interesting culture, because they just don't you know do things. They don't make things poorly. They really invest into the process of making something and doing it well. Uh,
Yeah.
and I deeply respect that. So it'd be cool to go over there and just have conversations with people that have that outlook.
Just the level of craftsmanship. I think
Right.
that's what I value the most is they seem to care about heirloom.
Right. For sure.
You know, they care about doing things a certain way that they don't care if it's slower or not as profitable or fast.
Yeah.
They care about the outcome and the product and the
Right.
process.
Yeah. For sure.
And I find that to just be kind of refreshing, but also it's just nice to see that people still care about doing things the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. It's so, yeah. Yeah. Sometimes profit. That's I think one of the things that isn't talked about a lot is in these major glove companies is profit over there's a lot more worry about profit over quality. I That might be kind of a bold statement to come after big glove companies, but I think just kind of how it is, right? There's you got to make your money to have these corporations, and I think there's a lot of small independent makers in Japan that have small glove companies where there's only a couple people making gloves in their factory. It's very cool. It's very I respect it a lot. Very, very cool. So,
Yeah, and I think the person who's also buying a custom glove too, there's still money to be made 'cause they're likely more serious and they want the customization
yeah,
to be able to, because at the end of the day it is a performance tool
right, right,
and they care about, like a professional athlete would much rather a custom glove than buying something off the shelf, and there's no way that these companies are able to help every professional athlete
mm,
because there's thousands of them,
right, right.
so it's just there's too many guys to be able to, you know especially when you're looking from single A all the way up, that some of them probably are going to independent makers and being like, hey, like, how do I go about getting this?
Yeah,
Not everybody is making Shohei Ohtani's glove.
no. You're right. It's tough. That's a whole nother tangent we can go down. But the every pro player has an agent, and that agent now goes out and tries to get brand deals for this player. So each player, especially at the pro level, will get a glove, and for every appearance they make, they get paid. They get a deal. They get money on the back end for rocking a certain brand. Which for somebody like me who barely makes it as a maker, just can't afford to pay like a pro guy a glove, to make a glove. So it's an interesting world to try to drop myself into this market to see if I can try to get a pro player. That would be my ultimate goal. So someday I think it'll happen, but just gotta wait.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of time, and sometimes the opportunity just will present itself, and
Yeah.
for you, I hope that happens because I think that's not only exciting, but also that's how brands grow. And
Right.
I can speak to myself personally. If I was an athlete, like a pro athlete, and we were sponsored, I wouldn't just willingly switch over to another brand just because they were paying me money, because that would
Right.
alter my ability to perform. Like when I was growing up, I wouldn't wear anything other than a Nike shoe.
Right. Right.
So like if they were saying, "Hey, we're going to give you Adidas shoes," I'm like, "I'm not wearing them because I'm not comfortable. It doesn't fit me right."
Right. It's not the same fit and feel.
So
Yeah.
if I can't perform, that extra money you be giving me doesn't serve me anyways because I'm not performing. So then I lose my entire livelihood anyways.
Yeah.
You
Players
know?
have a preference, especially when it comes to in baseball. When it comes to a glove, it's like a glove's an extension of who you are and the position you play. Having a certain brand having a preferred brand it's definitely going to happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of choice out there.
So like just to throw on like another glove, I can imagine there's guys where like I don't want that money, that 50 grand you're going to give me or 100 grand or whatever it is. It's not worth it because if I don't play as well with it, what's the
Mhm.
point?
Right, right. Yeah, true. And it comes down to like how it's a business. Like these players make their money for making plays, so they want to have the best tool out there to make those plays.
I actually do feel bad for Division 1 college athletes because sometimes if the school is sponsored, you have to wear that
That
stuff. So if
schools,
you're
yeah.
sponsored by Adidas or Nike or Jordan or New Balance, you have to wear that stuff.
Hmm.
And I don't know, like, if I would even do that. I know you have to and you don't have a choice, but I'd be like, I'm going to wear shoes that are comfortable.
Right, right. Yeah.
Like, I'm
No,
not just
no,
going to
it's
throw on anything. And I know
yeah,
almost all of them do it, and probably a lot of them don't have any say. And they're like, well, you're off the team then.
yeah. It's that's such a weird thing to think about. Like the Savannah Bananas, they're a baseball team. They're like Harlem Globetrotters for the baseball
Yeah.
world, kind of. They do fun stuff. I'm sure you've seen it on social media, but they're sponsored by Wilson, and the players can't use anything other than a Wilson glove. And it's very similar for a lot of the college athletes. These teams get contracts with these companies, and then the players have to use one of these brands. It's an interesting deal.
Yeah. I just don't know if I could. Like, there's certain things that it's just like, it affects the way you play.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
It's like a personal thing. There's a difference between just putting on a shirt,
Yeah.
but changing your glove or your other things, it definitely seems like it's more of a almost an appendage,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
and it changes. So I've always wondered about that. But, you know, you mentioned, one thing that you really want to do is, be able to sign a MLB player so you could have your glove in, a big league game.
yeah.
What do you think is your 5-year goal? What plans do you have for the future? Is it new designs, branching out to try to get more exposure? What would you say is the near and the far term goals? I'm assuming the big long term goal is something to do with professional athletes, but what do you see for the brand moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I honestly haven't put a lot of thought into glove making specifically. I just my whole world revolves around repairs. Me and my buddy Chris from the Glove Lab, he and I work together closely on a lot of gloves, doing repairs. So, and I don't foresee that going down. Everybody has a lot, everybody's glove breaks down over time. And so glove repairs is a cheaper option than buying a whole new glove. So I think in the next 5 years, I could really see that taking off. But I don't really have any goals with the glove building side. Right at this moment, I just want to see if I can sell a few. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah,
Yeah. No, definitely. And I think that is important. And as gloves get more and more expensive, they're not throwaways anymore. The
yeah,
repair business seems like it probably is very viable because you can't
yeah.
you can't just throw away a $500 or $600 glove anymore. They used to be much cheaper when we were younger.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's yeah, it's tough. It's a weird thing because I think culturally there's things out there that people buy and just use and then replace and don't get fixed. I think they're made to be broken eventually. Um
Hmm.
and I think baseball gloves can get into that a little bit depending on the model, or if you've got a kid's glove, there's a lot of factors that go into that. But it's so rewarding that some guy who has their gloves from, he played with it in the 70s and he wants it fixed up and playable again to play with his kid. There's nothing more rewarding to get that back to field ready. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
100%. There's
yeah,
something
that's
really kind of cool about that. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're going to try to do that. And
yeah,
I hope we'll have a fun second episode,
yeah,
a month or two after this, and
yeah,
people will get to see kind of how we went about it because there's something interesting about that. And,
yeah,
maybe some big leaguers listening to this and he's like, you know what, maybe I'll give this guy a shot
yeah.
and, get
That'd be
my
cool.
hand molded,
Yeah,
and, figure out. And I think that's the goal of these conversations is to help makers hopefully reach another audience, and also people learn about what goes into making all the products and the hours and the hard work and the
Yeah.
things that are done.
Yeah. And
You know,
Scott takes it to a whole new level. Like when you just said getting your hand molded, that's very much a him thing. He does amazing work, and I don't think he went into full detail, but like he'll take somebody who has missing digits or has a deformed hand and will make a glove that will fit them specifically so they can play baseball. He is like the founding father of the baseball glove community in my mind. So it's, he does amazing things. Um,
yeah. I mean, not only is he just a really nice guy, but he takes a lot of pride in his craft, and I think
yeah,
as most of us do, we take a
yeah,
lot of pride in the products that we put out and the way we go about it.
yeah, for
And
sure.
I thank you for hopping on because I
Yeah,
think there's just something really interesting to get multiple perspectives on how things are made because Scott really talked more about the process of where glove making's going
mm,
in the future from a technology standpoint as well. And you kind of brought it back to where it's been and how do we keep innovating. And I think there's
yeah,
something really nice to hear both sides of,
yeah,
that both have their merit and they're both needed in the game. So, I appreciate that. And, I hope everybody, appreciated getting the inside scoop of America's pastime,
yeah, yeah,
how the gloves go. And eventually, we'll have somebody on for talking about making baseballs because we got to bring the whole thing full circle.
yeah, yeah.
Eventually we'll do all the sports and I want to go industry by industry and talk to everyone.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, baseball's like, ugh, like, yeah, yeah. I know you've got some, maybe your eye on a few people to talk about that, and it is a totally different thing. Like there's not a
yeah.
machine that makes baseballs. You have to, the
Nope.
actual leather cover is sewn by hand, and you know how hard it is. So yeah,
Yeah, I'm
it's a
holding
lot of
one
work.
right now in my hand.
Yeah,
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 they're
yeah,
they're hard. They're not for the faint of heart. They take a while,
yeah. They
It's
do, they
you
do.
got to get the
Yeah,
tension perfect in these people and find the right materials, and I feel like I'm on the right track. So,
right. Yeah,
I found some new cotton thread I'm going to try out. I actually was
yeah,
working on it yesterday. So,
yeah.
it's
Cool.
exciting. So, where can people find you so they can check out all your products that you have going on?
Yeah, just macprovisions.com, or I mostly hang out on Instagram, just at macprovisions. But same on YouTube and TikTok. I've just at Mack Provisions. Yeah, yeah. People reach out all the time and want to know how to make gloves or have questions about making things. So if anybody has questions, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
And as always, you can find us at leathershoppod.com
yeah.
and
Go
at
listen. They're fun to.
leathershoppod.
Sorry to cut you off. They're fun to listen to. I mean, you had a fellow baseball glove leather worker on, and it was cool to listen to her and some, Scott stuff. So people go out there and listen. Sorry to cut you off.
You heard it here first. So I appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys next month. See ya.
See ya.